Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I don't know about this lighting. Hold on. Let me fix. Yeah, it's kind of better. Um, oh my gosh, I'm rolling it hot today, y'all. I slept in way later than I anticipated, and I am behind the eight ball on everything this morning. It's not even morning. It's daytime for everyone in the world, except for those of us night shifters. If you're just stumbling onto this, my name is Bree. I'm a nurse practitioner here in Georgia. I work in an ICU. And I also have this channel, which I talk about all things nurse practitionering, both educational stuff and professional stuff. And each week I come on here live with a couple of people and talk about something either professional or educational. I try and bounce it around. This week we're going to be talking about the downsides to being an NP. So it's kind of a downer of a topic. However, it's super relevant and important if you're in a season of trying to decide to go back to school. So we'll get into some of that in just a little bit. Oh my gosh, I'm so out of sorts right now because I never sleep as late as I did today, and I'm behind the eight ball, playing catch up today. Sorry, let me get a little bit of moisturizer on here. So I'm working nights, mostly 2 nights a week, and I worked last night. And usually on my first night, I'll just pull like a 24-hour, like I'll be awake during the day and stuff, but I try and sleep in late. And yesterday I couldn't because it was such a crazy day for me. And so I think I was just like super behind. Not that I sleep much anyways, but 4.5 hours is like 2 hours more than I usually do. So, okay. So, not sure who's on yet. Usually I have a couple of fun dudes that join up. We'll see if they catch up later. If not, please feel free to jump in with any questions that you have. I'm open to any topics at all. I just usually pick a subject because I don't enjoy coming on here and just like struggling to monologue for a half hour. I find it super, I don't know. It's hard to gauge when there's no one to give you feedback on whether or not this is something they want to hear or not hear. So I usually pick a topic and we'll kind of talk on that and take questions. And I love it when people are here to ask clarifying stuff. It helps me to refine my practice as well. One of the things I have found being a preceptor is that, there are a lot of reasons why having an NP student is great. There are a lot of reasons why it's a stressor, but there are a lot of positives to it as well. And one of the main things is they ask you hard questions. They ask you things that you've never really thought about, like why it is the way it is. It's kind of like when you're parenting and your kids ask you the big questions on life, like, what is a black hole, Mom? You're like, I don't know. It's like a hole in space. I don't know. It just is. I don't know. And I find that almost every shift with a student, they ask me something like super relevant in a way that I've never even thought of. And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that. So anywho, all right. So topic of the day, worst parts of being an NP. I got to give you a little bit of background here because I have talked about this subject on TikTok. It was actually my number one most viewed YouTube video. It's got like, I don't even know, I think we're up to like 15,000 views, which in my little microcosm is a lot. And it's kind of interesting to me that that's the one that took off. That's the one that I get the most feedback on, the most responses on. I don't know, but when you scroll YouTube and you like do searches, that's what people are generally looking for. They're looking for like cons to anything. Like, why shouldn't I do this? Why would I not want to buy this? Whatever, people want to know. I think it speaks to us as human beings when we're making hard decisions. We just want to be informed. We want to know what the positives are, what the negatives are, so that we can go into it feeling fully informed of what we're getting into. Because I feel like even when things are hard, people are willing to do it as long as they know what the expectations are and what to like prepare for. I was that way too. This is in part why I started this channel, because when I was debating going back to NP school, I struggle with decisions anyways, but this one was a biggie for me because I had kids and a husband and it was just a lot. And I didn't feel like I really knew what to do. And I didn't feel like there were many people out there talking about this kind of stuff. So that's in part why I started it. So anywho, I say all that because particularly the TikTok that I did, people are very emboldened to say whatever they want to say on TikTok, which is fine. Sometimes it's not always so nice, but some of the feedback I got on the TikTok was that, I shouldn't be spreading negative messages, that we need to encourage future NPs. And my preface in everything, in the blog I wrote, in the video, maybe not in the TikTok because it's so short, but is always that, I do this because I love this profession. To me, this is the best profession in the world. It is something I wish I had done 15 years sooner. I highly encourage people going into it. I don't like it when people are like, there are too many NPs out there, it's saturated, don't go back to school. I can't stand that. Like, don't crush other people's dreams. So it doesn't come from a place of trying to discourage people to do it or like to spread negativity. It's more just to bring awareness to things that you don't necessarily anticipate. Because I found that once I graduated and got out of school, there were some things that I knew might be an issue, but I didn't appreciate how severe they would be. And there were some things I had no clue about. So it would have been nice going into it just to know. Not that I would have done anything differently, except perhaps, I don't know, gird my loins a little more. I don't know. Okay, so Elena, because they are hidden things no one talk about until you actually are there. So I would want to know them. Exactly. That's the whole point, is that, it's things that there are not a lot of people who do what we do, right? There are a lot of people going back to school to be NPs, but when you look at like the numbers of nurses to NPs, it's very, very small. There are much fewer NPs, mid-levels, if you will, in the world than there are physicians. So there's just not a lot of people publicly talking about these things. So anyways, it comes from a place of love. Big, long-winded speech to say this all comes from a place of love. And my other preface I'm going to say this is that some of these things are kind of big. Most all of them are pretty minor, though. Like, in the grand scheme of things, to me, the pros far outweigh the cons, but it's going to vary from person to person based on your values and where you're working and all of these kind of things. But for me, these are all very minor, but it gives you a list of ways to weigh the balances of what's right for you. So having said that, let me, hold on one second, let me put on my old lady glasses. I got to pull up my blog post to refresh my memory on how I started this, because again, I woke up late and I'm ill prepared for you guys. I apologize. Usually I'll let you read over this stuff before I start, but this is me fresh on the heels of waking up. Bear with me for 1 second. Yeah, okay. It's the preface, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the first thing is narrowed scope. So as opposed to when you are working as a nurse, most all of us have worked a little bit as a bedside nurse, even if it's only for a brief period of time. Most all of us are used to being employed as, seeking jobs as, onboarding as a nurse. And when you are a nurse, the world is your oyster, particularly in this season of life. You can pretty much do anything you want to do. I don't care even if you're a new grad. Residency applications are a little bit competitive, but you can still, every single nurse that I've coached through interviewing, every single one of them have gotten multiple offers. So to me, it's been a minute since I've been in the nursing world. I still feel like you can pretty much walk into whatever you want as a nurse, period. You can graduate school and either go into oncology, or you can go work in a primary care clinic, or you can go work in an OR and IC. Whatever you want to do, the world is your oyster. You have so many options that it's almost overwhelming as a new grad to figure out what it is that you like. So limitless options for what you can do as far as your scope as an RN. As an NP, it's entirely different. You've got to narrow so far down. So before you even go back to school, you got to decide what it is you want to be in life. And most people that I know don't know. Even myself, I had been a nurse for 17 years. I was like, I'm going back to school to be a palliative care NP, period. That's what I want to do. I'm going to do acute care because I think I want to do inpatient. So I'm going to do acute care. All the way until the semester before I graduated, I thought that's what I was going to do. So it's hard. It's really hard for those of us who are used to particularly job hopping. I did a lot of different specialties as a nurse because that's just who I am. So if you're that kind of person, it's very limiting to feel like, okay, well, I'm going to go the acute care route, which means I won't be able to practice with mommies or babies or children or primary care. Well, what if I want to do that one day? What if my retirement dream is to have a flexible schedule and work urgent care? I can't do that as an acute care. What if I wanted to start out somewhere kind of easing into things like a minute clinic or something where I'm independent and mostly going off of an algorithm? Can't do that. So to me, this was really hard. Like I really struggled with this. Like here's where I'm at right now. Here's where I think I want to be, but I don't know. And if you want to have multiple options, you got to have multiple certifications. So a lot of people that I talk to and people I've interviewed on the channel are dual or even triple certified. So that is a negative piece that I did know going into it. The bright side to this is that what I didn't realize once I chose the acute care route was that until I was like most of the way through it, that within each specialty, there are a lot more options than you think there are. You can sub-specialize without going outside your certification. What I mean by that is like I'm acute care, so I did most of my training in the hospital, and that's sort of what they prepare you for. But I can also work in any setting in which the role in the population delineated is sort of classified as an acute problem. So I can work in any specialty clinic, cardiology, oncology, orthopedics, as long as it's not a place where it's considered a patient's home for medical care. I cannot do any kind of primary care. I can't do broad overview of all the medical diseases. I can't really do wellness prevention. I haven't really been taught that. So I can't and shouldn't do that. But I can do like specialty clinics. So if I wanted a different pace, I could go and look at a clinic somewhere, and some clinics work very fast, some work very little easier pace. So there are more options than I thought there were when I started out. Like it's not just the hospital role. And it is the same for FNPs. I talked to NPs across this country, and the first time I got a resume from an FNP who wanted a job in a hospital in ICU, I was like, well, you're not going to be able to work there because you're FNP. Wrong. There are plenty of states, particularly in the Midwest, critical access hospitals, where FNPs do work in the hospital. So it's not as cut and dry as you think it's going to be. Elena says, have you come in terms with it? Or have I come to terms with it or still longing to work different populations? Part of me does, but that's sort of a personality thing. Like I have ADD, so I'm kind of always like shiny object syndrome. Like, ooh, maybe I want to learn that. I also just want to like learn. Once I get to where I feel like I'm at the top echelon, like I feel like I understand things pretty well, I usually get this itch to try something new. I just kind of crave a challenge. And so personally speaking, yes, I do. There is a part of me, I would say it's maybe like 15% of me that's like, I still want to go back and get my FNP just so that I can say that I have it. If I want to have the option for opening my own clinic that was doing more primary care stuff, I could, like I just don't like the limitation of it. But having said that, I got two formal job offers when I was an NP student. One was in the job I'm currently in, which is ICU, and one was in a melanoma clinic downtown at a very, very big group. And I debated a lot between the two. But part of me does think, I wonder where I would be right now if I had taken that job. Like, what would that have been like? So yeah, I think for most people, most NPs that I meet, they do sort of have this like, what if, I think many, many people do have that. But the cool thing about it is it's not super hard to go back and get your post-cert. You can do it in most places will offer a 2-semester program. It's a little bit more money. It's a lot more time investment in clinicals, but outside of that, you can do it pretty quickly. It just kind of sucks because you get your RN and the world is your oyster and suddenly you're not. So you gotta kind of hone in on what it is you want to do before you want to go back. What I always counsel people when they come to me and they're in a state of indecision is, where are you at right now? If you graduated right now, what is it you want to do? Like, what is your dream job? And this is hard. This is very, very hard for a lot of people to identify. And so sometimes I've had clients before, I'm like, listen, we're going to pause here. You're going to take a week. We're going to reschedule. We're going to come back. And I want you to literally have written out a list of what you want in a job, what you don't want in a job, and let's try and narrow down. Because if you don't identify what it is you want to do right now, then it's sort of like you're floundering through the woods. There's this famous quote from one of my favorite books, which is, and I always get this in the wrong order: the horse, the boy, the mole, and the fox. That's not how it is. It's those things in a different order. And it's a book of fables. And this horse and this boy are walking through this marsh, and they're surrounded by nothing but trees, and they're lost. And the boy says, I can't see anything in front of me. I don't know where to go. And the horse says, or the boy says, I forget where we're supposed to go. I'm lost. And the horse says, well, can you see right in front of you? And the boy says, yes. And he says, well, then make your first choice. Just make a choice and take one step at a time. And I like that because when you're kind of in this season of spiraling on, I don't know where I want to be. I want to really only do this one time. You know, I'm older. I don't have a ton of money. I'm doing this one time. Just pick what you like right now. Just pick what you like right now. And I can't tell you how many nurses I meet in the ICU that are going back to school and they're getting their FNP. And I always ask them, can you tell me why you're choosing this? Not that I'm being oppositional at all. We need more FNPs, but explain to me what it is you want to do, because I would say 9 times out of 10, these folks, they'll get their FNP, they work for a year, they're unhappy, they go back to school all the time. And so it's sort of taking you think, I'm tired of the hospital, I'm tired of this, I'm tired of seeing sick people, I want to do something different. But if you haven't really like shadowed in that role, if you don't really know what it's like, it may not be what you think it is. So pick what you like right now. If you don't like it, go back and do something else. People do it all the time. I'm going to pause for a second and see what everybody's saying. Kiriki says, yes, that's what attracted me to acute care NP. There's a lot to do within the specialty. I already know I do not want mommy and babies and children's ever. Period. I did know that. For sure, I did know that. And even in the acute care program, you get a fair amount of training. You know, antibiotics. This one's safe for mommies. This one's not. Like I don't want to know that. I don't want to remember it. I don't want to think about it. But I will tell you, Kiriki, where I work, we have a big labor and delivery department, and it's maybe once a year. It's not often, but maybe once a year, the OB will come and sit down in my office and they're like, hey, I'm bringing you a patient. You tell me when I need to take the baby. And I'm like, are you talking to me? Like, are you talking to me? I'm an ICU nurse practitioner and you want me to tell you when to deliver the baby? How am I supposed to know that? It's super overwhelming when it does happen. Thankfully, you know, for the most part in acute care, you're working with doctors. There's always a doctor around. You can, you know, I'm going to need you to talk to my attending about that because I don't know. But there are things that will come up in any practice on either end that you're like, same thing in primary care. Like if you're in primary care and you get a super sick patient, you're like, I don't know what to do with this. Just go to the ER. Like you're outside your comfort zone. And so you will get some of that, but I hear you. I don't like that population at all. Carol says, I don't know, an FNP can open their own clinic breed. They can, but only in like 20 somethings. Well, actually, I take it back. If you live in an independent state, you can without any type of physician collaboration. I work in a restricted state, so I can open a clinic, but it has to be in collaboration with a physician, which sucks because you have to pay them and they cost a lot of money. I've looked into this thing, you know. But yeah, NPs open their own practices everywhere. And I remember being told this when I was in school, and I remember thinking, why would you ever want to do that? That's a huge amount of burden and liability. I would never want to do that kind of thing. These are human lives. Like, why are we pushing? Why is the AANP and the American Nurses Association pushing so hard and lobbying so hard for nurses, NPs, oh my gosh, to have independent practice? Like, why do we need that? But now that I've been out in practice for 6-7 years or so, and I see people doing this, and I see the need for it, and I see the benefit to it, I'm like, oh yeah, we need independent practice. I just never really like stood out in my mind because like I work in a hospital, right? Why would I want to be independent? I don't want to be independent, but in a different role and population, it's certainly warranted. And plenty of these little bitty teeny tiny towns where they are desperate for NPs, they can't hire anybody. It would be great for people to have access to care, you know, through an NP because there aren't physicians there. Anywho, okay. Yep, they can. They absolutely can. Okay, so narrowed scope, that's number one. Hold on, let me get back to the blog because this is a little bit different. I have some notes from the video that I did, I don't know, was it a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that, that are super old. But the blog is more recent. So let me just see how I worded this. Okay, because of the narrowed focus, decision is hard. Number two, you're going to have less mobility. So, and this kind of segues into my next point, but I'll start here. As a nurse, I job hopped a lot. So I would do something when I got comfortable with it. I would try something else. It was super easy. You go and you go on Indeed. There's 25 million job openings. You say, hey, I'd like to do that. You go interview. You interview. 2 weeks later, you started your new job. Super simple to hop around, change things up if you don't like it. Very, very different as an NP. And because of that narrowed scope, that is one factor in this. I can't just say, you know what, I am tired of working in the hospital. I want to do clinic. I can do clinic, like I talked about in those specialty things, but I can't just switch over and do urgent care. So I'm a little bit more, there's less job options available to me. So that kind of feeds into that whole narrowed scope. There's just less jobs. There's less jobs. And then segueing down to that is the second point, which is, and I hate this term, y'all. So I'm saying this, but it's hard to like make it come out of my mouth. And that is the market saturation. Hey, Scott, it's okay. I don't like the term saturation. I feel like this is a negative connotation. I actually don't think it's the accurate term either. What we have, and the way that Amanda Garnieri of the Resume RX has phrased, and I copy her all the time because I like the way she says it, is a geographic distribution problem of saturation. So in rural areas, in desirable cities, in desirable specialties, there is saturation. Absolutely. There are places in the US where it is very, very, very hard to find a job as an NP. I don't care if you're FNP, acute care. I've heard that even psych is getting saturated, which it hasn't been previously. All of these things, they're getting full. So there are less job options for you in those areas. However, you can go to North Dakota in the middle of nowhere and they will be begging for you to come to work. So there are places that are more rural where there is less desirable places to live that are desperate for providers. So overall, there is a greater supply of NPs than there is demand for jobs. So this kind of feeds into that saturation. I like to call it a competitive market because it's absolutely possible to still get a job, even when you're interviewing against 9 other people. It's absolutely possible. So I don't think it's saturated like to a point where you shouldn't go back to school at all. It's just you got to decide what your goals are. You know, do you really want to do this one particular thing, and are you willing to move to North Dakota to do it? So there's that piece of things. It's not as easy to find jobs. That is probably one of the biggest downsides to being an NP as opposed to RN. And this is something I did know going back to school. I think most people, unless you're living under a rock, are aware of this. And a lot of people are hesitant to go back to school because of this. So this is one of the downsides you just have to be aware of. Alex says, would you say it is generally easier to land an NP job where you currently work as an RN? Yes, absolutely. And I'm trying to think where I've talked about this at. I've talked about this in a lot of places. I know we did did I do a live on, I may not have done a live on it, but I know I did a blog post on how to get a job. And the thing about it is most NPs are hired from within. So if you go on a Google search and look for a job in whatever field in this area, what you'll see may be 10 listings, but what's actually open and out there may be 100. The reason is because of some of the other factors I'm going to get into later. People are much, much pickier in hiring NPs than they are in RNs for a lot of reasons, but they want to know the person who's coming in. You get to know someone through relationship, and relationship being as a student, like a clinical rotation student, as a nurse who works at the hospital. That is a very common thing. We tend to, if we're looking for someone and we know that we're not likely to get someone with experience, we're going to look around us at who's in school right now and who's coming out. Because when you know how someone works as a nurse, you know how they're going to work as an NP. You know what their skill set is, you know what their work ethic is, you know what their personality is like. So absolutely, we're going to hire from within. And even if it's not the place where you work, hey, Mr. Midwife, it's okay. Even if it's not the place where you work, medicine is a very small world. We all talk. So I am constantly getting texts from friends at other hospitals and texting them saying, hey, do you know this person? Do you have anyone you can recommend? We are constantly sharing names and recommending people. So you should always have your best foot forward, be on your A game if you're in school or if you're on clinicals. Absolutely. These are working interviews for sure. So yes, that's where I work as an NP for the organization that I worked for as a nurse for that very reason as well. So yes, much easier word of mouth where you work currently. So, all right. So we were talking about the competitive nature of trying to find a job being a big downside. Um, all right. I talked a little bit about supply and demand. I'll skip through all that. All right. And then, you know what? Let me take a pause for a minute and put a little bit of makeup because we're 25 minutes into it. I hadn't done yet. Scott and Mr. Midwife, I was telling everybody I am so like thrown off today because I overslept. Well, I didn't oversleep, but like I slept way more than I normally do. And I woke up and was like, oh my God, I gotta get on live. And so I like didn't prep for this. So it's sort of all over the place today. Usually I'll at least like prep a little bit before I get on here. So I have something in order in my life, but not today. Not today. And it's because yesterday, so I worked last night, and usually on the first day I work a night shift, I'll sleep in late. And my husband woke me up at 6:30 yesterday. I'm like, no, we just had so much to do yesterday. And that is the beauty of night shift, is that you're still here during the day to do things you need to do for your family. But that is also the downside to it, because then you don't sleep and you're just tired. But, you know, it is what it is. If I'd been at the hospital, I'd have been totally out of pocket. So one good thing that did come out of my busy day yesterday, though, was that I got my hair fixed. I'm an every 6-weeker girl because of the grays. And man, when they start to come in, it is very humbling. I'm actually, I went gray early in life, like 26. I started noticing my first grays. And it's, of course, just gotten worse over time. But now one of those ladies, I got to go every 6 weeks, or else I have a line of, it's almost, I think I'm actually white. But I have this, I know y'all are thrilled with this kind of stuff, but one of my dear friends is my hairdresser. She used to be my neighbor, and she does hair out of her basement. And I've been to her for 15 years now. And I refuse to go to anyone else because obviously vanity matters to me. And my hair is right up there. I tell all my friends at the hospital, I'm like, you know what? If I'm in the hospital, here are my last wishes. I don't care what's wrong with me. Make sure I got some propofol and that my hair is brushed. And, if you feel like putting a little bit of mascara on, that would be fine too. Just don't let me lay here uncomfortable and looking bad. I don't care what else is going on. You can do it, whatever else. So anyways, she was out of town. It's been spring break around here. So I was like 2 weeks overdue, and y'all, the line, like literally a line of white. I'm too vain for this. It was a rough 2 weeks, y'all. It was rough. I was totally off. I was not myself. I walked around with my head down like, oh, COVID, y'all. During COVID, I moved out. I don't know how many of y'all know this or not, but I moved out of my house because I was in ICU. We were the second hospital hit in Georgia, and we were a hotspot, and it was horrible, and nobody knew anything, and we were all paranoid. And several of the doctors at one of the hospitals I worked at were living in their basement because they were like, I don't know, like how dangerous this is for my family. And I'm trying to protect them. So I was like, well, God, so I moved out of my house for 6 weeks. I kind of lived in isolation in this little, my in-laws have a little place in the mountains. And so I stayed up there by myself, and I was overdue for hair when I went up there, y'all. 6 weeks. Oh. So my sweet friend took pity on me, and she was like, I'll tell you what, at this point we were scared to be around each other. Right. So she was like, I'm going to bring a kit to your house. I'm going to leave it on the door. You come pick it up, and I'll walk you through it. Y'all, if I had known y'all then, I would have brought you along for the journey, because my gosh, was it entertaining. I mean, I was entertained, and I was completely by myself. Why I didn't film it, I don't know. But like standing in front of the mirror and trying to color, I've never colored my hair in my life. I'm a big fan of paying others for their expertise. I'm like sitting here sectioning it out, and I was like, this part was fine. I was like, yeah, I got this. I'll just section it out, color it. Until I got to the back, and I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm happening. And so I'm like doing this thing blind. And then I come down, I've got dye all over my hands. It was so entertaining. I laughed so hard. I was like, I have no idea what my hair looks like. I probably look like a leopard in the back. Yeah, fun times. COVID was fun times. I know y'all probably had no experience like that at all. Hopefully you didn't have to go through that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. Alex says, also, if the job title is listed as PA position, would you apply for it as an MP? Yeah. Absolutely, I would. Because you know what? Here's what I've found. Like now that, so the place I work, we do a lot of interviewing, a lot of hiring. I don't, in large part, it's physicians, but I've just been involved in a lot. And I don't know how it is everywhere. The experience I have is the experience I have. So take it for what it is. But um, this is, so the difference between working as an RN and an NP. NP, you're much more closely tied. This looks terrible today. Holy mackerel. You're much more closely tied to administration. So administration runs everything for us. And I'm going to have to fix that. That's a problem. Yeah. So I don't know. Here's how it works for us. Sometimes I will be told there's a position or we're expanding or we need a new NP. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I show up to work and that day in my email, there is an alert that says, hey, there's an interview today for an APP for this. And I'm like, well, what are we? I didn't even know that we were hiring. So a lot of times we don't even know on this end. The people who are doing all the marketing, the recruiters, because once you get to NP level, most organizations hire recruiters to find people. They do all that stuff. I don't even know what the listing says, what we're looking for. I'm just asked to show up to the interview and be prepared. So I think that the people who are doing these postings, who are looking for the jobs or who are looking for the NPs, they don't really know what they're looking for either. They are very executive, completely non-medical people. So I think a lot of times these postings will come up and they know they're looking for a mid-level of some sort, but they don't necessarily know. They only know what they're told or what they think the organization needs. So yes, I think there are plenty of times when an NP would fit the role perfectly, or as well as a PA. Now there are situations in which they aren't. If it is a surgical job, an OR job, OR heavy job, unless you're RNFA, don't apply. They are specifically looking for a PA because PAs get rotations through the OR that we do not as NPs. I don't know if I fixed that or not, but it looks slightly better this time. Okay. So yeah, I would absolutely still apply. Now, I will tell you, if I don't know if you're looking for a job right now or not, if you're just asking generically, but if you're looking for a job, looking online and submitting a resume from an online posting is probably the least fruitful of all your job searches. Your job search really needs to start with networking and or seeking out the job you want and then demonstrating for them why they need to hire you. Like cold calling. I've done some videos on this too, on how you cold call someone, how you go to someone you don't know and tell them that they should hire you. Today is a day. All right, so where are we at now? We're talking about, okay, and then, all right. I want to talk a little bit more about job options and how they are limited as a NP. Part of this is that because you're narrowing down so much, and you can even like sub-narrow your options. What I mean by that is you can go to school and be in acute care, but really only have an interest in ICU. Well, that's going to eliminate a lot of jobs for you, right? So, and even within that specialty, even in big organizations, there's not a lot of NPs. There's not a lot of turnover. There's not a lot of positions that come up very frequently. So like, for example, where I work, I think there are currently 8 of us, and we work for a big hospital system. So these jobs don't come around very often. So it just further narrows your options for when something opens for you. And I'll come back to another point on in just a minute. So table that one for now. The next point I wanted to talk about was the credentialing time frame in conjunction with that fewer job option availability. The two of those combine to make you more stuck. So the job openings don't come around very often. Once you get the job, people don't leave it because they're scared to leave it because there aren't very many jobs. And then because it takes so long, even for someone with experience, it really takes a while to get someone onboarded as an NP as opposed to as an RN. As an RN, you can go interview, start your job 2 weeks later, go through your orientation phase, depending on how much experience you have, and be up and running. I mean, at most, even if you're a resident, within like 6 months. Like you really, really experienced. But for someone who has experience going from one thing to another, within 2 weeks, you can be up and running, right? You got to go through a couple of days of mandatory training. You may have to go and do some things to get your badge and like bureaucratic kind of stuff, but you're going to start within a week. Not so as an NP. In my experience, credentialing takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And that's after you've interviewed, gotten an offer, negotiated, signed your contract. Then it's going to take you 3 to 6 months before you can walk in the doors of that hospital. Oh my gosh, it's so long to get someone up and running in a job. For example, we have had a vacancy since last October where I work. We hired someone, we knew kind of who we wanted to hire. We formally interviewed her, made the job offer, I think in November or December. And she started late March. And this is at a hospital where we do it pretty quickly. 3 months is about our standard, and that's pretty quick compared to a lot of places. Now we got to go through she's new grad. So now we got to go through the onboarding phase, which is going to be 6 to 9 months. So all total turnaround from the time an NP leaves a role, a year, and can be even longer than that depending on what specialty he is and what goals. Like, are they going to be practicing independently at night? Like, how proficient do they need to be before they're on their own? A year to fill a spot. So very, very, very long time frame. So Mr. Midwife says 18 months. Yeah, oh my gosh, for the credentialing or for the whole thing and the onboarding, 18 months is, oh my gosh. I thought 6 months was bad. Oh my gosh. One of the PRN jobs I did, it took me 6 months. What I have found is that the places that have a lot of sister organizations or sister hospitals, they have to put you through the medical board at each hospital. Each hospital is considered its own entity, even though it's part of a larger umbrella organization. So each hospital has its own medical board, and each medical board has to approve you. And they only meet once a month. So once all that crap is, and if you guys are not NPs yet, you will find this out. Credentialing is a biatch. I mean, it's like signing a piece of paper when you buy your first house. You've got to go through months and months of, are you fit? Can you do this background check? What does your credit check look like? What is your, they got to go through so many things. And then you get through all that. Then they got to take all these documents, present them to the medical board. The medical board meets once a month. If you're off by a day, you got to wait a whole another month. Then they vote yay or nay on whether or not they're going to accept you. It is a freaking nightmare. So this PRN job that I took during COVID a couple years ago, I started the month before COVID. 6 months. I just wanted to have like a little backup job, right? 6 months. It was horrible. It's just not something you can do quickly. It's not something you can quickly pick up. Even locums for NPs takes a while, particularly if you don't have a license in the state where you're going. It takes a while, weeks to month. You can't just walk in the next day. So that piece of it makes you more stuck. So you interview, yay, you get the job, yay, you negotiate, yay, you get through all the credentialing madness, you start, you get your training, and 6 months to a year into it, you're like, okay, I got this, but I'm unhappy. It's not a good place to work. I don't like this. This is not the specialty I like, and you want to switch. You got to go through all that all over again. So people feel a lot more stuck in their roles. So this is why, unfortunately, I get a frequent amount of calls from NPs who are in very, very, very unhappy or even toxic work environments because they don't feel like it's going to be easy for them to leave and try something else, because it's not going to be. So that's probably one of the biggest, to me, downsides as a nurse practitioner. Scott says, what is credentialing? Okay, this is what boggles my mind. And maybe because you're early in your schooling, but I didn't really realize this until I was in my schooling as well. Nobody tells you this. Nobody talks about this. Credentialing. Do you remember the movie Catch Me As You Can? That guy, what's his name? Frank Abagnale or whatever. That guy went, one of his con jobs, he worked as a pediatrician for like a year or something like that in a hospital. And he would just walk around and stand at the foot of the bed and he'd get all the residents there and go, what do you think? What do you think? And you say, I concur. So there was a human being practicing medicine for a year that had no medical degree. And that's a real problem, as you can imagine. So we have to limit that. So there are significant hoops you have to go through to prove that you have the right education, training, aka your clinicals, education, training, and licensing. Those all have to be verified. And it's almost like government work. It's bureaucratic. Like, it's not like you can just take a screenshot of your license and send it to them. No. You got to go through all the hoops to get like a certified letter sent to the hospital. And then you got like all these things to confirm that this is legit. Then they put you through a background check to make sure you have no felonies or something like that. Then they, most places will do, what is it called? It's like an insurance check, which is crazy to me. As a nurse, I had like malpractice through the hospital. And I think I paid like a little nursing, $100 a year, something like that, for additional coverage. But most nurses don't get sued. Providers get sued. And if you've been involved in a lawsuit, you're sort of a red flag. So there is some program that puts you through a database of searching whether or not you've ever been sued. And for whatever reason, it takes forever. You have to do that. You have to do drug testing. You have to do, oh my gosh, you have to get verification letter from the school sent over. It's just like when you're buying a home and the underwriter keeps asking you for more and more data, more and more proof that you're a reasonable person to lend money to. We're taking a risk. We want to make sure that you're worth the risk. Same thing. Yes. You saw that movie. Yes, I concur. It's great. Great movie. That guy's fascinating. It's a nightmare. So like I said, at my hospital, 3 months, and that's pretty fast based on what I've seen and heard. Most places it's 4 to 6 months. I've never heard 18 months though. Holy crap. What did he say? Mr. Midwife said, yes, I'm between jobs now because of all this, having to go through looking for a new job, interviewing, recredentialing. It's such a nightmare. To me, this is maybe number 2, 2-ish on the list of what sucks about being an NP. It just does. It's just part of it. It's just part of it. You are more stuck. So again, you got to know before you go back to school what you want to do, have a pretty good idea of what subspecialty you want to go into, a little bit nervous that there might be a job in that subspecialty, and then find the job, land the job, get through credentialing, and then you get in it and you don't like it. Dang it. You're just a little more stuck. Again, take all this with a grain of salt. This is going to come across really negative. For those of y'all who weren't here in the beginning, my preface to this was, this is all said with love, and this is all stuff that I feel like it sounds really bad, but to me is really minor, but you have to weigh the pros and cons of what's important to you. Okay. So again, I feel like this is sort of a minor point. It's a hassle, but it does not take away from my satisfaction of the job. I would still go through all that hassle that Mr. Midwife is stuck in the middle of, because this profession is the greatest profession ever. Okay, so that explains why NPs get stuck in toxic work environments. I think sometimes when NPs are in these roles, it's sort of like when you're in the middle of trauma and you don't realize you're in the middle of trauma. And then we'll do like a Zoom where we talk about it. And I'm like, okay, listen, friend, I'm coming at you from an objective place in life. This is not normal. This is not healthy. And there are some that will come and they see they are unhappy. They feel it's really bad. I'm like, listen, compared to what I hear about, this actually isn't that bad. We need to reevaluate, like, what are your goals? What do you truly desire and want? So I think sometimes it's good to have a little bit of outside perspective on how things look to you, because when you get embroiled in the middle of it, it feels weird. Oh my gosh, you guys crack me up. Okay, so Scott, wait, let me go back a little bit. Alex said, if you have a DNP, I'm assuming it's still not appropriate to introduce yourself as doctor. What, right? This is a hot topic, friend. Do you play cards? Because this is the equivalent to when you're playing hearts and someone throws down the spade. Like, oh my God, you threw down a spade, which means I gotta show my cards here. And I'm not sure I want to do it early on in the game. I think this depends on who you ask. This is a very, very heavily debated topic within the NP world, on all the forums and all the stuff. It's been debated hotly on my TikTok as well, which is where people come to share all their opinions. Here's my personal opinion on that, and this is just my opinion. I hope nobody takes this the wrong way. I personally feel like if you walk into a room and introduce yourself if I go in and say, hey, I'm Dr. Bree, I feel like that's misleading. Because while I may be a doctor of something, I have a doctorate in a degree, in a specialty, the lay person doesn't really know that, particularly in the South. Doctors are old white men. And for people who don't have great health literacy or who aren't in the field, they don't realize the subtleties, the intricacies of how we practice and what we do. And so they're going to think that you're the physician. And I just feel like some people, while they have a lot of pride in the degree that they have attained and they absolutely deserve it, it isn't, it is a title. It is an academic title. It is for your business card. It is for your presentation. It is for your leadership role that you're applying for. It is for the quality job that you're doing. It is not necessarily for patient care because it confuses them. And while you're acting in the same way as a doctor, this adds to it because patients only know, okay, I'm here to see someone. I want a prescription for whatever. I don't care who it comes from, whether it's an NP or a doctor. They don't know the difference. And while I don't necessarily think there's anything super duper bad about it, it just to me is a little bit cringy because we should be proud of our profession. We should be proud that we are NPs. We are not physicians. And we should uphold that. And we should also, in some ways, respect the AMA. The AMA has been fighting, you guys all know, I'm sure, to hold NPs down as much as they can. I think in some respects, they feel threatened by us. I think in some respects, they're not wrong. There are some NPs out there who are doing things for the wrong reasons. They're doing things for recognition. They're doing things for maybe financial gain, out of a sense of ego. And I think, my office abuts medical residence office. And what these kids go through, and I say kids because I'm super old, it's insane. They have dedicated 10 years of their life to this. They work ridiculous hours. They defer their whole lives to attain this degree. And I feel like that should sort of be respected. So I'm going to just end it there because I could go down a whole segue and I don't want to piss anybody off. I think that nurse practitioners who go on and get their doctorate, I respect the hell out of them because I would never do it in a million years. It is a bunch of stuff that I have no interest in doing. I personally don't feel like it adds to the clinical role. So that's why I never pursued it, but there is a definite place for it and a definite need for it. And I certainly respect people who have done that. I just think if you're walking into a patient's room, is not the place to introduce yourself as Dr. Bree. If I was walking into a classroom, absolutely. Different scenario, Mr. Midwife says, I will absolutely never introduce myself as doctor. It's too confusing for the patient. Yeah, it's just good to keep our roles clear. And I think that some NPs, when they first start, get a little bit nervous that patients aren't going to respect them or are going to treat them differently or hear them differently if they are not the physician. And in reality, and I live in the Bible Belt, I have maybe once or twice in 7 years has this been an issue. It's almost never an issue. So wear your NP badge loud and proud. We are APPs, advanced practice providers, mid-levels. I don't mind that term at all. Like, I personally am glad I have a foot in two worlds. I can see things differently with a better perspective in my mind. So wear it loud and proud. I only use doctor in the clinical setting with students. Yes, exactly. And that is an absolutely appropriate role for that. There needs to be that hierarchical level of respect. Yeah, is the right word. So absolutely. And I love that your name is Dr. Aisha FNP. I love that. Okay. So we were talking about smaller, what were we talking about? Credentialing time frame. Yeah, credentialing time frame. Okay. Another downside is, okay, and this is something that I really didn't expect. Even through doing my clinicals, this is a piece that sort of took me by surprise a little bit. And that is this. Most of us have worked as bedside nurses. So we're used to having foxhole compadres. We're used to, like in my role being in the hospital, okay, we got a code brown. It's going to be nasty. It's a heavy person. All right, let's get the troops. Let's go in there. We're going to do a nasty job. We're going to laugh through it. We're going to have a good time. Like, we're in it together. We are colleagues, like true colleagues. And you have a lot of those friends around you all day. You have a lot of those friends in person. We spend more time outside of work, connecting and truly becoming a family. And you also have a lot more colleagues that If you need to switch, a lot more options available to you. I was blessed as an RN. I never worked a holiday because there was always somebody who's like, Brianna, you got young kids. I'll work your holiday for you. Complete 180 as an NP because of those things I talked about in the beginning, much, much smaller groups, much, much smaller jobs. There's not many of you. So the point I'm making here is you're going to have a lot less colleagues. You're going to have a significantly lot less peers. So while I work with a team of physicians and APPs, I think we have like 20 something physicians and 8 APPs. And that's split between days and nights. So on days, there are 4 of us, 5-ish of us. That's it. And we all are split throughout the week. So on a given day, there's one other person at best. Some days it's just me who's doing exactly what I do. And we don't see each other throughout the day because we're geographically spread out in the hospital. And the same can be true for outpatient settings, right? You go in an outpatient setting, there may be another APP in the office, there may be another physician in the office. You may not see each other all day because you're both involved in your patient panels and getting through the day. So you don't have those like friends. You don't have those like colleagues to like, okay, let's go in and see this incredibly difficult patient and deal with whatever they're going to say to me. Like there isn't anybody to do that. So you have fewer peers. And this is a piece that I didn't necessarily anticipate being as less rewarding. There are times I kind of miss, I walk on the unit and I just sort of miss being there with them. So a lot of times I'll just hang out with them on the unit, but you're in a different place in life. You're sort of in an island. You're no longer the bedside nurse. You're not a physician either. And even when you work with the healthiest team of physicians, there tends to be sex within the group, like sex, sect, but CTS groups, they're just going to see you a little bit differently, even the healthiest of them. So fewer colleagues. Which if you're the kind of person who's super social, really may affect your work life, your happiness at work. Every live that I do gets longer and longer and longer. And I apologize for y'all. I get long-winded, but I think it's in part because we have so much interaction. And I really, really appreciate all of you who are here, giving me your time and also interacting to make this a more rich environment and give feedback. So I really appreciate that. Let me know if I'm getting long-winded. Okay, so mid-level status plus smaller workforce equals fewer colleagues. Yep. Also, the other side of that, having fewer colleagues, it's almost impossible to switch a shift. I mean, we work together pretty well, but like when you work, you work. And when you're sick, you go to work. When I had the flu, I went to work because there was no one else to do it. So you can't just call out. You can't just not show up. Now, some places you probably could, but in this role in the ICU in particular, well, any kind of, honestly, even outpatient, if you don't show up, those patients don't get seen. There is no one to really fill in for you. So you're more committed to your job. It's lonely in the middle. Exactly. You're on an island. It very much can be. Mr. Midwife said, I've been to work damn near dead some days. Exactly. When I had the flu and I had a fever, I was, oh my gosh, absolutely miserable. I can remember it hit me like, and even if you like, I will preface like, hey guys, I feel like crap. I'm coming in. I'm only going to do a 6 hours, do what I can and leave. If you get there and it's all hitting the fan, you're not leaving. I've been in before, like I said, okay, I'll come in for 8 hours tonight and I'm leaving early because I haven't slept in 3 days and I'm exhausted and I can't do it. I didn't. Couldn't leave until the morning because what are you going to do? Like your colleagues, somebody's coding this person, that one's admitting 5 people. You say, peace out, I'm done. Like, no. And I remember one time I was sitting at the head of the bed and I had like this plastic, gown on, doing all this stuff, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to pass out, right? It's just, I remember being a nurse and hearing physicians talk about this, about how they couldn't like not miss work and thinking, oh, it's not really that dramatic. It kind of is. It kind of is. But don't complain about it. I don't love it when, anyways. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. It's just part of it. You just got to accept it. Certainly in some workplaces, it's not going to be that life and death or that serious. So take that with a grain of salt. Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. It's all just my opinion and my experience. Okay, so autonomy. this is probably my number one thing about being an NP that I knew would be an issue, but I didn't anticipate how big of an issue it would be. And I also didn't realize how much it would personally give me some angst. And some of this is just me as a person. I meet plenty of NPs and work with NPs, none of whom feel as strongly about it as I do. It just gives me a lot of inner turmoil. And that is this. Okay, this gets hairy, y'all. So I'm trying to, you see me trying to like temper my words here. Find an empty bed, go crawl into it. Call me if you didn't. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Revive said, love having the autonomy, but also like having someone there to bounce ideas off of, double check. Oh, absolutely. For inpatient work, I will stand by this to my dying day. And there are a lot of NPs who disagree with me, but I feel like if you work in an inpatient role, particularly a higher acuity role, healthcare should absolutely not be independent practice as an NP. Now, it's a little different in your critical access hospitals where there is no options. Okay, that's not necessarily what I'm referring to. I'm referring to these like large academic centers, right? The bigger hospitals where there are resources. It should be a it should be a pyramid. You should have a physician at the helm who may be in a place where they're not even seeing patients. They're just overseeing, they're helping, they're staffing patients with residents, they're staffing patients with you. I've been doing this for 7 years and I still feel like for the most part, I should be bouncing this off of a physician. These are life and death decisions that I'm making. And while I feel very comfortable with them, there needs to be some level of oversight. There just does. It's safest for the patients. So I will stand by that. Absolutely. But autonomy. When I was in school, my professor told me that you will want to go and work for a place where you have full scope practice, meaning that, and I'm talking kind of I guess this applies to any setting, where when you go to work, the people that you work for, especially the physicians, are going to allow you to practice to the full extent of what you're capable of doing, your scope. And I remember saying, no, I'm scared to death. I'm going to go work in ICU. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't need scope. I'm fine with somebody holding my hand. I'm fine with somebody telling me what to do because I'm scared to death. And I remember clear as day her saying, I know you feel that way now. In a couple of years, you will not. I promise you. You are going to want to do those procedures that they don't want you to do. You are going to want to see those difficult patients that they may not want you to. I promise you, you will. And I remember thinking, she's right. She's totally right. And I remember the moment at which it hit. And it's this point in time where you're staffing a patient with a physician and you're like, I really want to do this. And they completely disagree with you. And you're like, okay, whatever. And then you come back to work the next day, same thing. And years down the road, the same physician it's almost like they say the exact opposite, or they don't want you to have opinions about things, or, it's almost like it's oppositional in nature. And honestly, they kind of control the cards. They are the attending. So there are certain personality types, certain leadership styles within physicians or even lead APPs who sort of can make things very difficult for you. And it could be because they just don't trust you. They don't they don't think that you're proficient, or it could just be because that's just their personality. And I've talked to enough NPs. I know that there are people who are just like that. They're just like that. And it makes for a miserable working environment. There are places that I have seen in person, that I've worked at in person, where you are just a note jockey. You are there to put the line in, and they may tell you, hey, I want you to put an art line in the left wrist. Why? Because they're nice to you. Why? They're not in shock. I just want you to do it. Okay. And you just got to do it, for no rhyme or reason, just because they said they wanted to. Or, you've read the evidence, you've been working somewhere where you're kind of up to date, and you go somewhere else and they're like, nope, we're not going to do this. We don't do that here. Well, that's not guidelines. And I'm going to give you an article that shows you why this is the standard of care. And then they're just going to poo-poo your ideas, and then they're going to feel threatened by you. So truly, we are mid-levels. We are truly mid-levels. We have a lot more knowledge, a little bit more control over patients than we did as a nurse, but we are not physicians. And if you go to work for a team that doesn't see you as a colleague, it can be very unhappy. Alex says, I think it's funny how nurses are great NPs until they become NPs. Autonomy can be scary once it's given to you. Absolutely. You start all over. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations. I had a conversation like this just last night because everybody's in school. You're scared to death. Most people know. And whether they're in school or whether they're a new grad NP and they're like, I am so overwhelmed. We're like, remember what it was like when you were a new RN. Remember that feeling of, I have no idea what I'm doing. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm scared to death. That's how you feel as an NP, except times 10. And it takes a lot longer, but you will get past it. You absolutely will. Lonely in the middle. Again, it is lonely in the middle. Absolutely. You got to have kind of a thick skin. Particularly, Scott, I will tell you, I have some friends who have done jobs like working at minute clinics, CVS minute clinics. Kroger has something called the Little Clinic, where you are not really in urgent care, but not really primary care either. You're seeing a lot of the same kind of things over again. Sinusitis. You may do a lot of sports physicals. It's fairly minor stuff, but not necessarily primary care, but not necessarily urgent care level. There's a big need for that. Well, most of those people are working completely alone. I mean, when you say an island, there is nobody there but you, and you have a physician that you can call, but they may or may not answer the phone. So I've heard from a lot of NPs who feel completely isolated, like they are self-taught. No one taught them anything. It is very algorithmatized. Be very cautious if you are a new grad and you are looking at one of these minute clinic kind of jobs. Be very cautious, because that is truly an island. In-person teledoc. I have no interest in working at a doc in the box. Good. I mean, plenty of people like it because you're on your own. You can do whatever you want, right? You can kind of show up when you want to. You know, there's a little bit of pros there, but I've heard more negative stuff than positive. So that's why I say all that. So autonomy variability equals a higher risk of job dissatisfaction. So again, it kind of feeds into that whole like less jobs available, harder to come by, harder to start, harder to leave. You kind of feel stuck. And this is again how NPs call me, and they're in very unhappy situations because they feel stuck. And that's why. That can be one of the factors that adds to it. Let me put on my old lady glasses again. I'm so dramatic in my writing. So this is what I wrote about autonomy variability. Some teams and settings let you practice the utmost of your training and skill set. Others do not. Some view nurse practitioners as note jockeys, schedulers, order entry specialists, entertainment talent, etc. I say that because, yeah, I've been in that spot. Okay, and then the opposite problem of this is kind of what we were talking about with the minute clinic, is that you could be in a situation where you have not necessarily too much autonomy, but like not enough oversight, not enough support. So we talked about that already. Decision fatigue. Okay, I know I keep saying this is the most important thing, don't I? This one is probably this one is. Yeah. This is not the thing that made me the most unhappy as an NP, but this is the thing that shocked me the most of all of them. The part that I did not anticipate, and that every single day when there's a new NP with our group or a student that's with me, I cannot tell you how underestimated this problem is. And again, my caveat to this is it will go away. Well, it won't go away. It will get significantly better, and you will get much better at handling it, and it will be less severe as time goes on. So just bear with it. But your readers are cute. Thank you. I need some more of them. I have them stashed everywhere, and I can't remember where I put them. Decision fatigue. So one of the reasons that I went back to school was that I had been a nurse for 16 years. I had worked in a lot of acute roles, either in the ER and the ICU. So I spent a lot of time lifting, turning, and pulling people. And in America, we ain't getting smaller. I hurt my back 3 times during those years where I like pulled a muscle, was flat on my back for days, like couldn't do my exercise, like just totally derailed my life for weeks or months at a time. And I was like, my God, like this has got to stop. So part of the reason I started debating going back to school was, I need to do something less physical. I need to do something where after I work 3 shifts, I don't feel like I have to lay on the couch for 12 hours just to recover because I am physically exhausted, I mean, you all know that. If you've worked inpatient, you know that. You know what I'm talking about. Like it's just so incredibly draining to work your entire week in a 3-day stretch. So when I graduated and became an NP, and suddenly I wasn't having to do the lifting and turning and pulling, I wasn't having to run in and out of the room 20 times a day. I spent probably half of my day sitting down writing notes. It's like, oh, this is great. It's a much calmer pace. What I traded the physical burnout for was mental burnout. And it is legit. And I think you experience it to a degree as a nurse, nowhere near like you do as an NP. The mental strain is horrible in the beginning. This new NP transition phase that lasts, anywhere from 6 months to even a couple of years, I would say on average about a year, is so incredibly draining. Your brain is going to hurt at the end of the day. You are going to leave work. For me, I left work late for the first 4 months. I would come home during that day, and I've done a lot of research on decision fatigue. I've written a lot of stuff on it. I've talked about it a lot because it's fascinating to me. But one of the things, it's not on this blog, it's on one of the other blogs, but decision fatigue, there is some research that's been done. I can't remember where or who did it. I'll have to look at that blog. But 35,000, that is the number of decisions that a normal person, stay-at-home mom has to make during a day. Lots of tiny little decisions throughout the day. Do I want to feed them this or not? Do I want to wear this or not? Do I want to brush my teeth now or do I want to brush them later? What do I want to have? All these little bitty, teeny, tiny little decisions that lead to fatigue later on the day. People who are in executive level positions, who are in high level positions, who have to make big decisions that affect other people, like nurse practitioners, like physicians, that can be life or death, that are truly, truly important decisions. And you're making 9 million of them throughout the day, whether they're small or big. And some are mentally taxing, some are just a little bit taxing. Some of them, what the pros and cons are, but it's still hard because what ultimately do you want for this person? Yeah, they add up. And in the beginning, when you have the anguish between, well, here's the pros and cons of making a big decision, right? Should we do this surgery or not? Here's the risk. That's warranted. You talk with families, you help get their input. But let's talk about even the little bitty ones, okay? Let's talk about the patient that is intubated, that you're like, do I want an NG tube in the stomach, large bore, or do I want a small bore feeding tube? Okay, not a ton of like nothing you need to go to the family and talk to them about, right? But in the beginning, when you're new and you're like, well, what will the large bore get me that the small bore won't? What will I get on this? What is the risk of this? What if that they have esophageal varices and I'm worried about knocking off? Maybe small bore would be better. However, I think they may have blood in their stomach, and a small bore isn't going to tuck out blood. So this is what's going through your brain, right? And it's a tiny decision, and you've got a million of them to make for this one patient, and then you got to go on to the next one, next one. And then in between all that, you're constantly interrupted by nurses who have big problems that need you to do this, that, and the other. And like a clinic scenario would be the same thing, right? You're sitting there talking to a patient about whether or not you want to start them on losartan or another ARB. What are the risk benefits of this patient? And in the middle of that, your MA is asking you about something else, and the patient's family is asking you about something else. And you're like, wait, I'm trying to focus on this one thing. Let me run through all the stuff. And when you're new and these drugs are new to you and these problems are new to you, you have that aspect to it too. Like, do I know all I need to know to make this decision on top of making the decision? It's a lot. I hope I have expressed to you enough how stressful this is, because it's very stressful, particularly when you're new and you don't know the stuff. So what will happen is you make all these decisions throughout the day. You walk in the door, whether you're on time or not getting home, and you can't do anything. You can't do anything. You may walk in the door and your 3 kids come to you, and one wants to know if they can go on a field trip tomorrow, and one wants to know what you're cooking for dinner, and one wants to know if you can put money in their account at the school, and your husband wants to know what the plan is. I don't know. I don't even know what I want to eat for dinner. In fact, I think I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to take a shower and get in the bed, and I'm done. I'm done for the day. I don't want to make any decisions, no matter how small or minor they are. And I know that y'all need me to be here and be present for you, but my brain is fried. I am done. This is the level we're talking about. So you do this at the end of a 12-hour shift. You do a stretch of these days, and then the day afterwards, you got to recover. So you're not recovering because your back is sore, but you're recovering because your brain is fried. And you're like, I can't think. I can't make any other higher level executive functioning decisions today. I am going to scroll TikTok or watch Netflix for 12 hours. So you just trade one set of fatigue problems for another set of fatigue problems. I did not expect that. I did not expect that. So even if I work 3 shifts in a row, I still need recovery time. Having said that, it gets significantly better as you get more proficient. I still suffer from a little bit of decision fatigue the day after I work a stretch of days. I'm kind of drained a little bit, but it's nowhere near the like anxiety provoking, sweating, like overwhelm that it was in the beginning. Because at least now I know the facts, right? I know what the pros and cons are about the large bore versus the small bore. Okay, let's talk it out. Yeah, let's do this, you know? So it's just not as stressful anymore. Um, Oh my gosh, you guys are funny. Okay, midwife said I went from physical exhaustion to mental meltdown. Exactly. Scott said he's exhausted just hearing me describe it. Yeah, but again, as long as you know going into it what to expect, you'll be just fine because you'll know it when it happens. You'll be like, I remember when Bree described this in nauseating detail, and now I'm going through it, and she said it would get better, and it'll be okay. It's just the knowledge. It helps. It's the knowledge that it's there. Everybody goes through it. If they don't go through it, they're lying. They're lying to you if they tell you they didn't. I swear, they're lying. Nurse Scott says the key to all this is not to have cancer. Okay, but here's the thing. You'll have other decisions, right? You'll have a friend who'll be like, hey, you want to meet up for lunch tomorrow? And they'll want you to decide where to go. And you're like, oh, no, I don't know where to go. Can you just decide for me? I swear to you, it's that level of like, I mean, even tiny little things. Like you open the refrigerator door and you're exhausted and you're starving. You're just like, I don't know what I eat. Forget it. I'm not going to eat anything because I don't even want to decide what to eat. Or you eat all the things. Don't ask what's for dinner. Exactly. Well, okay, yeah. Zach and Dottie. Who are Zach and Dottie? These must be your people. All right, so mental burnout. Good, we talked about that. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to talk about, everything I'm talking about today is very super, like, makes me just a little bit nervous to talk about, just because you never know who's watching these things. But it's important for y'all to know. Let's focus on that. So this is the piece that I had no idea about. This is the one part that I like. Everything else I talked about, at least I anticipated on some level, even if I under anticipated how severe it would be. This is the one I had no clue about. And that is this. And again, my experience is working in a hospital, although I have done some outpatient stuff before too. As a nurse, you have a clear chain of command, like your hierarchy is clearly delineated. And you get your information about what's changing as far as the organization goes through that chain of command. And some things you may not like, some things sound great, whatever. It's handed down in staff meeting, right? Okay. And it may not make sense to you, but whatever, who cares? You're just there to do your shift, right? Well, as an NP, no longer so. You are a part of the organization. Your employment status is different as an NP than it is as a nurse. As a nurse, you are an expense. You are a necessary expense to make the organization run, but you are not an income generator. So your opinion matters only to so much extent, though, right? Ultimately, they're just going to say, here's what's happening in the hospital. Go do it. And you're like, I don't like that, but it is what it is. As an NP, as a provider, no matter where you work, this is the case. You are an income generator. You are an income generator, whether you are billing directly or your physician is billing incident to you. It doesn't matter. You seeing a patient, making a diagnosis, developing a plan of care, writing a prescription, whatever it is that you're doing is generating income for this machine. And this machine is a business. I don't care if they're for profit or not. This machine needs money to run. So as a person who is participating in the money that makes this machine run, you are exposed, involved in, whether you want to be or not, a lot more of the what I consider to be non-pleasant side of healthcare, and that is the money side. So there are going to be a lot of discussions you will be involved in. You will be much more heavily tied with the administrators, the executives of the hospital or the organization in regards to how you can produce more, see more, do more, generate more. You're going to have to do things like some people are put in positions where they have to prove their worth. They have to prove that the organization should pay this much money to employ you because you generate this much income. So you probably are going to need to keep track of how many patients you're seeing, how many RVUs, revenue value unit. I think that's what that stands for. basically how much money you bring. I don't want to do that. I just want to go to work like a nurse and take care of patients and just be a good human being. This is a business, friends. So you've got to turn on that business mind of yours in order to keep your job. Sometimes people have to prove, well, I'm seeing this many patients, I'm generating this much volume of work and money, and that's why you should continue paying me. Some people have to do that yearly. Some people have to see a certain amount of patients per day in order to make the income they make, because they get they get a stipend based on how many they see, or they get part of their salary is a bonus and is based on how many people they see. So there's very much how much faster can you work. In order to get a raise as an NP, like, I don't get automatic raises. I have to argue for them. And part of that is showing my value. What am I doing to bring more money in to generate more money for myself? It's just to me, it's ugly. It's an ugly part of healthcare that I don't like. But it is what it is. And the best thing you can do is know going into it that this is a part of it. This is why I always, always, always tell students and new grads, you need to keep track of what you're doing, particularly in the beginning. You need to have a little book somewhere where you keep a sticker. Every single procedure you do, you put a sticker, MRN number, something that says what you did, who signed off on it. I would write a little note about how easy or hard it was, so that I can say, yes, I have done 10 intubations this year, and therefore I can maintain my credentials in this. Because a lot of the times you think the hospital and the administration is keeping a record of this stuff, and they can't find it. They can't retrieve it easily. But you can pull it out and say, hey, no, I did this. Or another thing you can do as a student, this is a great idea, is that when you go to apply for a job or create your portfolio, you can show them, hey, I've done this. I would even go so far as to saying, in procedures in general, if you're observing something heavily, like if you're scrubbed out, you're with someone and there's someone walking you through it, I observed this very closely on this patient. This is how many I've observed. I would do that. Same thing with seeing patients. You need to keep track of how many patients you're seeing per day in the beginning, because you'll have to go through audits and things like this. So in the beginning, first year of your job, you need to keep track of what you're doing. Don't just assume the hospital will do it for you, because for the most part they do, but I've been in situations where they don't. And that is something you don't have to think about, worry about, stress it out at all as a nurse. Your job is guaranteed. They have to have you. You are a necessary component. As a mid-level, you're not necessarily necessary. You got to prove why you are good to them, why they need you, why they need to pay you what you're worth. So that's the last piece that I talked about in the blog. And that, to me, like I said, was the part that surprised me more than anything else. And it's honestly, y'all, it's minor. Do I sit around all day thinking about these things? No. But every once in a while, when something comes up, or, there's money involved, I'm like, God, such an asshole. It's like that, right? It's not changing my satisfaction with the job or the fact that I still think this is the greatest career ever. It is the best way to care for human beings like a physician without being a physician and going through all that angst. So again, all of these things to me are very, very minor, but you just need to know about them going into it, because to me, if you know what you're getting into, you can weigh the pros and cons of what you want to deal with. Where is my stuff? Anything pulled out, because again, overslept today. Scott, you and Mr. Midwife missed it today, but I slept a lot today and I'm off because of that. Yesterday I had to get up early and do a bunch of stuff, including getting my hair done, getting all the grays. And so I didn't sleep much yesterday. Now I can't do stuff. Okay, fine. It just is what it is. Some things are not going to be great tonight. Okay. Mr. Midwife says, money is the fuel, keep the vehicle moving. Yep. Unfortunately, it's a necessary evil in healthcare. I'd love to hear more about what details to keep track of and how to do it without violating HIPAA. So I think, I'm trying to think if there's any legal stuff here. Oh, y'all want to meet my daughter, Hannah? This is Hannah.
Hi. I look crazy right now.
She's a junior in high school, and she is in the middle of her show week at school. She's a dancer. So it is show week, which we love show week.
Very excited.
She has dances tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday. I usually go to all of them, but I have to miss tonight. I'll go tomorrow.
That's great. You're going to miss meeting Jackson. Disappointing. Another time.
She threw a name out there publicly. I'm shocked. She's in 4 numbers, and her first number is it's Raining Men. I'm like, I can't wait. Oh my God, it's gonna be so awesome. But it's a high school dance show, so it's very like, they mostly focus on jazz. There's not really any hip hop. It's not suggestive at all. So I'm like, what are they gonna do that's like it's Raining Men? I'm very interested on that one. I live vicariously through my kids. So this is actually a good way to wrap things up, right? Because Scott, we talked about how hard don't have kids. It makes it really hard. Yeah, it does. But then you get these kind of things that make life super fun. And part of my joy is living vicariously through my daughter, who is a dancer. I, in my mind, am a fabulous dancer. Vodka tells me I'm a great dancer. In reality, not so much. But I am definitely that dance like no one's watching. That's me for sure. Got no problems with that at all. But my daughter is the one who can dance like no one's watching, and it actually looks good. So she's been dancing since she was a little bitty, and I love to watch her dance. I'm a theater girl. I love to watch people who can like sing, act, dance. Oh my gosh, highest esteem, because I just think, my God, what talent. And the ones who can do all 3, whew, how? I guess we all have our gifts, right? God said, okay, you can go to work and take care of dying people and deal with depressing stuff and not get depressed, but you're not going to be a dancer. That's fine. I'll take it. It's fine. A lot of times when I'm having like really hard, this happens probably on a weekly basis where I'm having a like really depressing like talk with a family about what to do. And they're like, I don't know how you do this. And my icebreaker is always like, well, I can't teach. So there's that. Kids drive me crazy. So we all have our niche in life. Poke myself in the eye. Glad y'all were witness to that. Who is it? Is it, I can't remember if it's Scott or Mr. Mike is always telling me not to poke myself in the eye with a stick. I think it's so interesting to me that there have been a lot of girls here today. I love it. Typically it's a bunch of dudes and me, and I'm like, I know y'all are getting a lot out of this makeup tutorial here. But honestly, the reason I do this is because I wanted a way to like kind of get more like educational stuff out there in an informal way without adding to my workload. Because I mean, Scott and Mr. Midwife know, I'm sure some of y'all others also create content, but it is a time sucker to like sketch it out, record it, edit it, get it ready, post it. Like, it's a lot. And I just wanted something that wasn't going to add to my, like, the time I was going to have to spend, and something I could do like if I was just talking to friends while I'm getting ready. So that's why this is what it is. Which is why sometimes the information I present to y'all, I'm like, well, that wasn't very well thought out, but it's live. So it's live TV. It is what it is. I am missing half my stuff. So I wonder, this is why I'm missing my stuff. It's show week. Guess who probably stole my stuff? Because she's a klepto. Topic for a later blog. Okay, I'll come back to that. Hold on, Scott. Scott said, break a leg. Mr. Vice said, nope, don't break a leg. You'd be laid up for months. I know. I always, every time like show week comes and I'm sending her a text, I'm like, dude, great. And I always want to say break a leg. And I'm like, why do we say that? It's probably not what she wants to hear. I love showbiz. Yes, me too. I'm just fascinated. I think in a former life, I was some type of performer. It's kind of interesting that we are in this generation now where people can kind of do this sort of stuff and sort of scratch that itch a little bit on their own terms. And that's kind of how I feel about educating too. Like, I've had a couple opportunities arise to like do some teaching at the academic level. And ultimately I never do it because every time we start like talking through things and the topics and or what they want me to say, it's very like, I mean, you got to follow the rules of school. I get it. To me, it feels very censored. Like, no, I want to talk about what I want to talk about in this, and I don't want to present your PowerPoint. Anyways, I won't get into all that. Yeah, live streams are so much easier. So to answer your question, Scott, what to keep track of and how to do it without violating HIPAA. I think it's what you do with the information, right? If you're taking pictures of patients, if you're looking through charts you shouldn't be looking through, if you're putting stuff on social media, if you're making things public, that is one thing. If you are keeping a personal record that no one else is ever going to see but you and or the administrators who are also already going to be aware of that, I don't feel like that violates HIPAA. But if you were worried about that, you could scratch out the name and just have the MRN, although that's kind of an identifying. No, I guess if you scratched out the name and the birth date and it was just the MRN, it wouldn't. That's the way I did it just because it was quick and easy for me to grab a sticker. But you could figure out a different way to do it, I suppose, with non-identifying information. It's mostly just keeping track of what you've done. I mean, how do you do it for school? Like in Typhon, y'all have to enter names, right? I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I was in school. Maybe I'll ask the girl who's a student with me now how she does that. But it's just case logs, really. Keep case logs. As a student, any and all procedures, I would, you're going to be documenting patients you're seeing in Typhon, and I think they require that you do a certain amount. But particularly if you're writing big notes, and also anything that can kind of illustrate the variety of patients you've seen, you're going to go into different rotations. So when you're doing peds, what specific type of, what were the common type of problems that presented? Have a good summarization of what it is that you did there, how many hours you spent there, what are the top like 5 to 10 diagnoses that you saw, anything that you became kind of proficient at. That's kind of what you want to keep records of, because that's what you're going to want to highlight in your resume and in your interviewing. You also want to make sure that you have your preceptor's name, contact info. Every single resume or every single rotation that you go on as an NP student, you should have that information. You should ask them while you're there, while you're with them, if they would mind writing you a reference. Even if it's, I would ask them for two things. I would ask them for a reference letter if they're willing to do that. And beyond that, if they're willing to summarize in a sentence or two what they thought your strengths were. Because if in one of those rotations that you get, you're going to get someone to say something brilliant about you. And they're going to be able to say it succinctly in a sentence or two. Scott is one of the best FNP students I've ever had. He is a strong passion for this and is very good at this. That is a great thing to put as your little like quotation on your calling card that I talk about in, what is the video titled? Steps you can take to get an NP job, but it also applies to clinical rotations. You create a calling card, which is bigger than a business card, and it's got pertinent information on there. And so when you go into your rotations or you go into interviews, you can hand them out. So the more of that kind of data you can gather as you go along, the more you're making a case for people who have worked directly with you and who can attest to your work ethic, your clinical skills, all those kind of things. That kind of stuff is super powerful. The interview I did with a girl named Nikki, she's wearing a polka dotted shirt, and I think it says interview with a new grad NP. That is one of the best videos to watch in regards to interviewing a new grad NP, because she talks about how she got a job. And she's my student who was with me for a year. She got a job in a very, very, very tight market. She knew exactly what she wanted and she went after it. She interviewed and she was up against several experienced NPs and she got the job. And it was because of the portfolio she made and the passion that she showed. But she talks about all the things she put in that portfolio, and it was stuff she gathered along the way as she worked as a nurse and as she did her rotation. So definitely watch that one. What else would I get as a student? I don't know. I feel like that's mostly it. One of the things, I look at a lot of resumes, and one of the things I'm constantly telling NPs, NPLX, NP students, NP nurses who are becoming NPs, who are new grads, who are writing their resumes and looking for their first job. This is probably the most common error I've seen, is that they don't put enough information about their clinicals on the resume. Like when I'm looking at this resume, I want to get a real good snapshot of who you are as an NP. And if all you have been as an NP is a student, that's fine. Highlight what you learned, what the top diagnoses you saw, because what I want to know from this is, how much am I going to have to train you? Like, because again, that whole year-long time frame to get you up and running, I want to know how long it's going to take to get you there and what your skill level is like. So if I know nothing about you as an NP, I don't know how long it's going to take to get you there. So the more information you can give me about what you've done so far, what you're comfortable with, and how much I need to add on or how much you don't have, that is very crucial information to know. And this is the most common error I see on NP resumes, is that you don't do that. They spend all this time talking about all this great experience they've had as a nurse, which is good. It is very good. Don't let me not highlight that. It is good to have experience as a nurse. You are much more marketable. However, it doesn't help me as much as you think it does, because working as a nurse is 180 degrees different than working as an NP. 180 degrees. You work more like a physician as an APP than you do as a nurse. So I need to know what experience you have working as a physician, or NP, if you will. So highlight that. Okay, I think I need to wrap it up. An hour and a half. We're all getting tired of these things being so long. Okay, so that is it for this week on the worst parts of being an NP. All that to say, still the greatest profession in the world. Still highly encourage people to do it. Even with the market being tight, I don't like that word saturation, there's still a spot for you. Next week is going to be a clinical topic. And I think, hold on, I started it, but I forgot what it was. I started working on it last night. Darn it. I forgot what it was. That's how fast it just goes away. I don't see my edited on here. What was it? Hold on. I can tell you, because I think I wrote the notes over here. Oh, this is a fun one. Calcium channel blocker overdoses. You're going to want to come in for that one, y'all. This one is fun. This is fun to talk about. The reason I chose this is the last YouTube I did was a reaction to my most watched TikToks. And when I was looking back at them, it's kind of surprising which ones were popular, but my most watched TikTok of all time was about calcium channel blocker overdoses. And it's kind of, I guess it's not really surprising, because it is one of those shock factor things. It is a rare thing that you encounter, but holy cow, it is the weirdest. It is probably the weirdest ICU patient I've ever cared for. I've taken care of 3 of them in my lifetime as an NP. As a nurse, I don't remember it. I don't know if it's just that I never saw it. I mean, I don't think I ever saw it. I would have remembered it. It is one of those situations in which, if you've ever done it, you'll never forget it. It is traumatizing. It is shocking. How they look, how they present, what you have to do to take care of them. It's crazy. Like, okay, I'm not going to give anything away, but show up next week, calcium channel blocker overdoses. Hopefully you'll never have to see it in your life, but if you do, you'll say, I remember when Bree talked about this, because it's weird. That's all I got for this week. As always, if you have any ideas about what you want to learn about, talk about, I welcome all input. So thank you all so much. I appreciate everybody for coming on today. And sorry, I'm looking back at y'all's comments. Y'all are so cute. Alex said, crack open an ice cold bubbly, problem solved. And in my mind, in regards to coming home and being overwhelmed, that makes me laugh a little, because I love bubblies, but like bubbly, it's got the butt puckering high doses of insulin video. That's the one. It is truly like 700 units of insulin an hour IV. It's scary stuff. Okay, I will see y'all next week. I hope y'all have a lovely night. Hopefully you don't have to work, and let you know how the show goes. Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.